Welcome friends, let us continue our discussion on the subject that is transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide within our body. The first part was in respect of diffusion, that is diffusion of oxygen and CO2 across the membrane. Now today we are going into the deep of the chapter, the how this process takes place. So prior to that, we like to say this again. This is lungs. And in the lungs, the atmospheric air comes inside. It comes through the trachea. This is trachea, and trachea is divided into bronchus. Then it divides into bronchioles. And ultimately it ends in air sac or alveoli. Clear? Now this atmospheric air contains oxygen and CO2 also. So what is the CO2 of this atmospheric air here and atmospheric air here? That I am giving you a chart. Partial pressure of oxygen, CO2. Partial pressure of CO2 in the atmospheric air. Then it passes through trachea. Tracheal air. It comes to trachea. Then from trachea, it comes to alveoli. And ultimately it goes into the pulmonary veins. In the veins and arteries, suppose in arteries and veins. This I am giving you a chart so that it will be easier for you. CO2 is here 159 or 58 like that, millimeter of Hg. Then whenever it comes to trachea, it comes down to 149, 149.3, 149.3 millimeter of Hg. Then in alveoli, here the partial pressure come down to 104 millimeter of mercury. Then in alveolar or arterial blood, it is 95 to 100, make it 100. And in veins, the oxygen partial pressure comes down to this. Likewise, CO2 in the atmosphere air is 0.3. Whenever it comes to trachea, still it remains 0.3 or a little bit more or like that. Then in alveoli, the CO2 is 40 mm of Hg. In arteries, it is 40 mm of Hg. In veins, it is 46 mm of Hg. This is the difference. How? How this difference is coming? To take a note of it, what is the actual position? Now, in order to understand this, first we have to draw the previous day's heart also. This is the left, 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 right, right, right. So here the oxygenated blood comes. Whatever oxygen is taken in by these capillaries, they unites to form a vein. This is the only exception, that vein is rich in oxygen. This is known as pulmonary vein. It is taking the blood from lungs, taking oxygen from the lungs and coming to left ventricle, left auricle, then left ventricle, then it passes on, rich in oxygenated blood. Then it passes on to the muscle or to the tissue or each and every cell. It breaks up this aorta, arterioles or arterial capillaries, they breaks up. They breaks up here and they give out this oxygen to the respective cell for their daily work or for their oxidation of foodstuff. So oxygen is going out. At the same time, the veins or venules are formed. The venules unite. The venules unite to form veins. Veins to vena cava. Clear? To vena cava. This is superior vena cava. This is inferior vena cava. Ultimately, they drains their contents into the right atrium. It is rich in CO2. This is CO2 and it goes through an artery, because whatever is going on from the heart away, these are called arteries. So this should be termed as artery. This is the only exception of the artery which carries the deoxygenated blood or CO2 rich blood, and this is known as pulmonary artery. So this pulmonary artery forms a network and it picks up the oxygen, and it picks up the oxygen, with oxygen it goes and supplies here. So here oxygen is taken in. I have told you earlier, this is the entry point of oxygen. This oxygen travels here. This is a pumping station, travels here, and this is the exit point of oxygen. Exit point of oxygen. Now, here from CO2 is produced by oxidation of foodstuff. CO2 goes inside. This is rich in CO2. So this is the entry point of carbon dioxide, and from here the carbon dioxide goes into here. So this is the entry point of oxygen and this is the exit point. Likewise, this is the entry point of carbon dioxide and this is the exit point. Entry and exit. If you can remember this thing, it will be easier for you to write the total substance. Now, in the atmospheric air, it is 159 millimeter of Hg. Mercury. When it reaches trachea, you see this is coming down 10. And further in alveoli, it is further coming down to 100 or 104. Again, in 100 is further coming down, and hence it will definitely come down. Now, how this is happening? Number one point, during inspiration, whenever we inspire, during inspiration, during inspiration, atmospheric air is drawn in by our nose. Through our nose, it travels from trachea, bronchus, bronchioles, and this and that. And here, the atmospheric partial pressure of oxygen is 159, while that of CO2 is 0.3. Whenever we expire, even if after forceful expiration, the lungs never remains empty. It remains full of air. So there are some airs inside the lungs, alveoli, trachea, bronchus, bronchioles. So there is an admixture of this atmospheric air. And in this air, there remains oxygen as well as CO2. Mixing with that, it is coming down to, in trachea, it is coming down to 149.3. Clear? Further, it is coming down here also, because these space are not empty. In the lungs also, there is always exchange of gases. Even if you expire, forceful expire, then also the gas exchange continues. So here it comes down to 104 millimeter of Hg. So it is coming down because of the admixing of the residual air present in the lungs, trachea, bronchus, bronchioles. Now, here I have already discussed how this O2 is coming inside the capillaries and CO2 is coming out from these capillaries by a process of diffusion. This comes down here and it. Now, again, out of the total 500 ml of air which we breathe maximum 500 ml of air in a single breath. Even if we do our maximum effort, we can inspiration is 500 ml. Out of this 500 ml, this is the place where gas exchange takes place. Here it is 350 ml. Although question may be asked, here also oxygen is there, carbon dioxide is there. So why gas exchange doesn't take place? No, because this is not the site for gas exchange. Because of the inherent factors which I told you earlier, because it should be thin and it should have the semi-permeability membrane and there should be a capillary network. These are not available there. So in the bronchus, bronchioles, trachea, there is not exchange of gases. Here 350 ml reaches air out of 500 ml inspired. So this 350 ml does the function of this. As a result, because of this admixture, it is coming down to 104. Again, in the pulmonary capillaries also, the CO2 is going out and O2 is coming in, but still there are some CO2 remains dissolved or it can escape. So from 104 it comes down to 100 here or 95. So here it is 100 or 95 ml of Hg oxygen. And CO2 remains 40. Why CO2 remains 40? Because here the CO2 was earlier 46 and here the CO2 was 40. So there is diffusion. So diffusion will persist how long? Until and unless the equilibrium is achieved. So equilibrium is achieved at 40. This is 40, this is 40, the diffusion ceases, and that's why it remains 40 mm of Hg. Clear? Now here itself, you see, here oxygen is 95 or 100 and carbon dioxide is 40, CO2. That carbon dioxide is 40 or here PCO2 is 46. So these 46 and 40, it are in order to reach an equilibrium, it will have 40. Then it comes down here, it is 40. Clear? In this way, the exchange takes place. Now, we have to go through the main subject. How this is the entry point of oxygen, exit point. You should remember this. This is the entry point, exit point. Here, entry point of CO2, exit point of CO2. And remember this diagram, then you will be able to write the answer. Now, in which form this oxygen is carried and which form this carbon dioxide is carried by the blood. So we know that blood is the main transporter and blood carries the oxygen and CO2. Now, there are oxygen is carried by the blood in two forms, in physical form as well as number one in physical form. This is the main part, in physical form. Oxygen here remains in physical form 3%, dissolved in water of plasma. Water of plasma as physical solution. So 3.3% remains in physical form. So O2 remains in 100 ml of oxygenated blood, the O2 remains 20 ml. This is oxygenated blood. Right here, oxygenated blood. And in 100 ml of carbon dioxide rich blood, or I should say deoxygenated blood, 100 ml deoxygenated blood, the CO2 is 4 ml. Now this remains 3%, physical form out of 100, 3% remains, or 0.3 ml. And the rest 19.7, 90.7% or whatever you want to write remains in chemical form with oxyhemoglobin. So, in the form of oxyhemoglobin 19.7 and this is 0.3 ml. So this is a two form in which the oxygen is carried and mixed. Oxygen has a oxyhemoglobin or hemoglobin has a great affinity to bind oxygen. So this oxyhemoglobin consists of two parts. You might be knowing that globin and hemoglobin. Heme plus globin is hemoglobin. It remains attached with oxyhemoglobin, that is joins with oxygen. This globin portion is protein, and this is the iron containing portion or prosthetic group. Sometimes it is called. It contains 4 Fe. 1, 2, 3, 4 iron rings are there. 4 Fe. This 4 Fe, each atom of Fe can bind 1 molecule of oxygen. So hemoglobin can carry 4 molecules of oxygen at a time from here. So the formula is Hb plus O2 HbO2, 1 molecule. Then Hb plus O2 HbO2 plus O2 HbO4. Third one HbO4 plus O2 HbO6. Then HbO6 plus O2 HbO8. This is the form in which oxygen is carried in the form of oxyhemoglobin. The hemoglobin contains 4 atoms of iron, and each iron is capable of joining with 1 molecule of oxygen, and this is the formula of oxyhemoglobin, that is hemoglobin plus oxygen. This is the two form in which oxygen is carried. Clear? Now how carbon dioxide is carried? That is a little bit difficult, but not that much. This is very easy because in physical form it gets dissolved, and in chemical form it remains with hemoglobin as oxyhemoglobin. Clear? Now CO2. Now CO2 is carried in physical form, dissolved in water or plasma. It is 7%. That is physically dissolved in plasma, some CO2 remains mixed. This physical form, forget about it. It is not that much difficult. That it remains physically formed, physical solution, and whenever it goes out by diffusion process. Number 2, chemical. Chemically, it remains as carbaminohemoglobin. That is hemoglobin with carbon dioxide is known as carbaminohemoglobin. The formula is Hb plus CO2 This is carbaminohemoglobin. This is the formula. So, in the hemoglobin, these carbon dioxide remain attached with the amino group. So, it is known as carbaminohemoglobin, not carboxyhemoglobin. We know that it is carboxyhemoglobin or this. No. It is carbaminohemoglobin. It remains, and this percentage is 23%. This is 7%. This is 23%. Writing here 23%. Write down. So it is 7%. It is 20%. And 70%. 70% of carbon dioxide remain or carried in the blood. That is here carboxyl. From cell it is coming from here. So this 70% remain in the chemical form. How? That is a very important part, and this in short note it comes. Suppose this is a drop of blood, right? Drop of blood. It contains hemoglobin. It contains this is hemoglobin. Hemoglobin. This is RBC. Very sorry. How this carbon dioxide get mixed in the blood? This part I am erasing, otherwise you may confuse. 23% done. 7% let it be there. Now out of this 70%, 70% comes here in the blood. In the blood we know that there are RBC, WBC, platelets and and plasma also. Here plasma also. First, the CO2 produced in the cell get mixed and thus into RBC. Enters into RBC. Clear up to this? Now, in the plasma there is water, and in RBC also there is water. There is water in RBC also. So this water I am writing in red, so this can be differentiated. H2. So initially we will write in that way. Initially the CO2 produced as product from cellular respiration, this CO2 enters into the RBC. It mixes with the water of RBC and produces H2CO3. H2CO3. It is known as carbonic acid. Clear? So initially the CO2 goes into RBC and mixes with the water of RBC and forms H2CO3 with carbonic acid. And why? In a very rare way that it is a weak acid. This is a weak acid. It doesn't remain in this form. It breaks down or dissociates into H plus ion and HCO3 ion. Hydrogen ion and HCO3 is bicarbonate ion. This is known as bicarbonate ion. So in the RBC, there is a reaction, chemical reaction. Here, this bicarbonate ion then goes outside the RBC. Here, it goes outside the RBC, HCO3 minus, it joins with Na and produces Na8CO3 and is carried to the lungs for emptying their contents. And this bicarbonate ion goes out in the form of CO2. Of course, there will be a reaction, and that reaction will enable the CO2 to go out and CO2 will go out. So, but it is carried in the form of 70% of the carbon dioxide produced during cellular respiration or metabolism. That CO2 first enters into the RBC and it remains, it reacts with the water of RBC and produces carbonic acid and weak acid. It immediately dissociates to form HCO3, and this HCO3 goes out of the RBC and enters into the plasma. This portion is known as plasma. Right, it comes into your exam. This is known as plasma. In the plasma, it mixes with sodium and produces NaCO3. Now, this RBC is losing negative ion, and its positive ion, positive electricity goes up. To counteract this minus, drainage of minus ion, there is chlorine ion in the plasma. In the plasma, the chlorine ion enters to compensate the loss or compensate the drainage of HCO3 ion. Cl ion enters. This transfer of HCO3 ion from RBC to plasma, and to counteract that one, the Cl ion enters from the plasma to the RBC is known as chloride shift. Clear? This will come in your interview or in your exam, that what is chloride shift. Right from here, initially this weak acid, this as dissociates, this goes out, and to counteract that, this is to maintain the electrical, last sentence you write, this is to maintain the electrical neutrality of RBC, the Cl ion gets in. This Cl ion then joins with K to produce KCl salt. Clear? So this is chloride shift, and this phenomenon is known as Hamburger's phenomenon. What is known as Hamburger phenomenon of chloride shift? Very, very important. CHLORID. This is known as Hamburger's phenomenon or chloride shift. Now this is being carried. This is carried through this vena cava. It comes. Here the reverse takes place. What happens? Again, this dissociates into HCO3 and Na plus. HCO3 again enters into RBC. Clear? And at the same time, this KCl dissociates into K and Cl goes out. electrical neutrality is maintained, and whenever it goes into HCO3, this HCO3 again reacts with H2O and produces reacts and produces H2 and CO2, and CO2 goes out. Clear? So CO2 goes out in the reverse direction. Clear? Now if you know this, the return is nothing. Whenever it reaches the pulmonary capillaries over the alveoli, the HCO3 ion gets in the RBC, and the HCO3 it produces H2CO3 with the H plus ion, and this HCO3 ion by carbonic acid is broken down into CO2 plus H2O, and CO2 goes out, and to compensate that also, again the KCl dissociates and Cl ion goes out. Clear? This is the one. And primary one is HbO8. HbO8 is easy to dissociate. It dissociates into Hb plus OT. Hb is known as reduced Hb. Whenever oxygen goes out, it remains reduced hemoglobin, and it remains as such. By taking oxygen, it may be oxyhemoglobin or it may be carboxyhemoglobin. Forget about that. This is the exit. And oxygen entry, number one is in physical form 3%, 19.7 is oxyhemoglobin that goes out. Now, to write the history of this, simply write, this is over. This is over. Now you can write the essay or the history part of it. History part of it is very simply you can write. I will take only 2 minutes to complete that. This goes to the what is this? Cell. Individual cell, it breaks up. This breaks up into arterioles and it gives out O2 and it is taking CO2. It is taking CO2 and it is returning back here. Clear? It is returning back here. So whenever you will start from at any point you can start. You start from here. After oxidation of foodstuff, the CO2 rich blood, and the CO2 rich blood is artery. The pulmonary artery brings the deoxygenated blood to the alveoli. In the alveoli, the gas exchange takes place. Because of the difference in the partial pressure, the diffusion takes place, oxygen takes in, and CO2 goes out. Simply, first. Second sentence, the pulmonary capillaries joins to form the pulmonary vein, and the oxygen with fully loaded oxygen, it has oxyhemoglobin and something dissolved in plasma, 3%, 0.3% dissolved in plasma, it goes to the, not heart, it goes to artery. Then you can skip that one. The arterial blood contains oxygen. But it will be wise, because in every books it is taken the arterial blood consists of this. Why they are not mentioning this? Because we may confuse, but you can write these ones. It in the form of pulmonary vein, it reaches the heart, and from the heart through the aorta, arterioles, it reaches here, and oxygen is given to the respective cell for oxidation of foodstuff. In this way, the transport of oxygen and CO2 takes place, and oxygen is in 3 form and this is in the form of 3 form. You can simply write that. Till then, take rest, goodbye. And please do subscribe. Thank you very much.